Permit me to share my slide. Okay. So today, we're going to be having a personal excellence program session. Today, we're going to be talking about communication skills, and the person that's going to be training us today on communication skills is no other person but Miss Tunuke Ogunbi. She's a she's a practice. She has practiced engineering for with over 11 years now in both Motorola and BlackBerry in the US and Canada. Originally a computer engineer from Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. Tina obtained a master's degree in telecommunications from Southern Methodist University, Dallas, Texas, before doing an exclusive MBA program in Richard Ivins Business School, University of Western Ohio, and switched to banking. As a banker, Tina has worked in both TD and Scotiabank with over 7 years of experience in financial sector as a risk manager and mitigating and mitigation risk. Currently working at Scotiabank, Tina is also a senior manager, small business policy and strategy analyst within global risk management and manages their S&B portfolio analytics. She's also the founder of Creative Bees Industry. And this would give me the pleasure to introduce Miss Tina. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me clearly.
Sorry about that.
Yes, I hear you. Good morning, man. You're welcome. Good to have you.
Good morning. Good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Hello, ma. You can take over from here, ma. Thank you
Oh,
very much.
awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm very glad to be here. I appreciate Transformation College, the entire management team, all those that reached out to me. You were mentioning to drop in the chat where you're calling in from. I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada. It's about, I think, 4:34 a.m. my time. So
Wow.
it yes, it's pretty interesting. But at least it's morning, so it's good. It's great to see everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with us today. So I'm going to ask if I can share my screen. Yes, okay, I can share my screen. Okay, awesome. So today we're talking on our coordinator for today's session rightly said, a very interesting topic, which is communication. In fact, permit me, just bear with me. My screen is running away, getting the better of me. Let me arrange my screen so that you can see it clearly. 1 second. Okay, I'm going to reduce the number of things I can show. Communication skills, presentation and writing. So let me go to presentation mode. Awesome. Okay, if any challenges at any time seeing me or hearing me, please let me know. But if not, we'll go straight into it. Okay, awesome. So communication skills. There's a lot of talk about communication, especially in the time and era we live in. We're all on social media. I mean, if you're not, you should be. We're all establishing profiles, having social presence and footprint. That's the quality and the efficacy of our communication is so important. For instance, I believe you can all hear me clearly. You know what I'm saying. You can all, view me, but, how what I say versus how you perceive what I say is truly the art of communication. So if I intend to say something and you perceive it as I intend to say it, effectively I can say what I have communicated. But if I intend to say something and your perception of it was completely different, then obviously we can say, I perhaps have miscommunicated. So communication is such an awesome field, and there's so many aspects to it. Just before we go into the slides, I wanted to mention that we have been advised many moons ago, many years ago, that when you're communicating, 93% of what you say or how you communicate is actually non-verbal. For instance, your body language, how you come off. And people were saying, how can only 7% be content? So another professor came up, Albert Merabian. I always like to refer to him because he was a bit more specific. So he gave a rule. He called it the 7-38-55 rule. Maybe you write those three numbers down: 7-38-55. What he said was that 55% of communication is effectively from body language. For instance, how am I coming across in the business world? We say, how are you showing up? In other words, am I slouching? Am I, fidgeting? Am I giving off a vibe like, I'm uncomfortable? That's body language. He said 55% of communication is body language. He said 38% is tone of voice. What can you hear from my tone of voice? That's why we've been advised that when you're communicating, try and maintain an even tone of voice. So if you start at this pitch, you try and stay there. If you start at this pitch, try and stay there. But if you go, the dilation of your tone affects your listeners. They don't know what to expect. Or if you're reading a story to say to children, or you're reading an audio story, I've seen a lot of audio books. You can raise your voice to express excitement, and lower your voice maybe to express danger, or fear. But essentially, you are encouraged to realize that 38% of your communication comes up from your tone of voice. Now we have 55% from your body language, as we've been advised, 38% from your tone of voice, only 7% coming from what you're actually saying. Amazing, isn't it? So really, when you communicate, it's the art of conveying intended message meanings from one entity or group to another. Like I said earlier, the use of mutual signs and semiotic rules. For instance, believe it or not, different cultures understand things differently. There's always a joke that is passed around, that in some cultures, this is yes, this is no, and so if you're communicating in that group or those group of cultures, they essentially you using the nod for yes and the shake of head for no is acceptable. But some cultures, this is yes. So again, if you're in that particular cultural group and you're nodding, you may understand what you're saying, but they may obviously be lost in translation. So obviously understanding your audience is a very key thing. So we're going to go into what exactly are some of the components of communication. We are exchanging, obviously, information, ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions. That's the goal of communication. And how do we communicate? Obviously, through speech, signals, writing, behavior, no, behavioral. How do you, like I said, how do you perceive what I'm saying? What I'm saying, the content of what I'm saying is only about 7% of what you get out of what I'm communicating. Every other thing, my how do you put now? My body language, very important. My tone of voice, very, very, very salient. And the main things you will take away. The content of what I'm saying essentially is only a very minute percentage there. Okay, so communication skills, because in the world we live in today, like I said, everybody on social media, everybody, establishing our presence, our footprint. But like I said earlier, you should be. If you're not, you should be. Because I say if you're not on social media, you don't have social footprint, then you essentially cannot be found. Okay, how do you show up in a way that effectively conveys, you as a professional, you as a business owner, you as a business person in the context of the world we currently live in. First of all, obviously, to define it, we say it refers to both the verbal and non-verbal, which we covered, active listening, clarity of expression, adaptability in different contexts. Like I said, again, depending on the culture or the audience you are addressing, some naturally known or acceptable norms of communication may be effective, and some may not necessarily be. For instance, some audiences are more into hand gesticulations, to kind of convey your messaging. Like you can see my hands above my desk right now. I'm trying to illustrate, but in some contexts and communication, this can even be more distracting. So you're advised to limit how much hand gestures you make. Strong communication skills enable individuals to establish rapport, resolve conflicts, foster collaboration. I mean, again, for us, like everybody dialing in, we ask where's everybody dialing in from. We have people that indicated that they're dialing in from different parts of the world. I'm from Canada, some are from Lagos, Nigeria, some are probably from Accra, Ghana, all over the globe. How is this afforded to us? Because in the context of virtual communication these days, you can actually be in the comfort of your living room, in the comfort of your bedroom, and communicating effectively. And when you're doing it virtually, you have to realize that what are the key things you need, which is, it's actually people have said a little less daunting when it's virtual than when you're in the room, which I think also builds helps, because you can sit down. That can enable you, maintain your composure easier, and you can ensure that the parts of you that are showing, are, are very well represented. There's a very there's an internet personality. I don't know if we know Mr. Wonderful. What's his real name again? I'll remember his real name in a minute. He's originally Canadian, but I mean he identifies as a US citizen now. um he's a very famous, what do you call it, economic advisor in terms of stocks trading and all that. He always has his interviews virtual, and he always has his suit and tie on, and he always has another camera show you what he actually is wearing. He's normally in his flip-flops and his beach bottoms, but he does that just to show you that in the virtual world we live in, he can just roll out of bed, wear his shirt, his tie, his suit, present himself from head to torso. But anything else, that you don't see is not really a concern of his. Just to show you how far the world has come in terms of, how we can show up and how we can leverage, the tools available to us today to communicate. So examples of communication, of it when it comes to communication skills, you have active listening. How do you actively listen? We're going to cover this a bit more. One way, obviously, we've been advised over time is to be able to nod your head. When you nod your head and when somebody is talking, you're showing that, at least you're acknowledging, giving them giving them cues that you're acknowledging, and you're able to follow along what they're saying. Verbal articulation. In other words, you can say things like, okay, so just to repeat back to you what I think, I've understood. In other words, you're trying to, regurgitate or reiterate back. When you say and do that, the person is able to understand what you have assimilated. In other words, what I have said that you have understood. Are we together? We have non-verbal communication, which has to do with your eyes, your blinking, your body gestures, how you are leaning in to the person talking. For instance, if the person talking to me is this way and I'm leaning this way, okay, I can be looking at them, but because my body is stationed in a different direction, what are they going to perceive? Maybe I'm actually about to leave that space. I'm about to head somewhere else, and they're just interrupting me. I'm not giving them my full attention. But when I turn to face them and look them squarely in the face or the eye, then they feel, they have gotten my attention. So we have non-verbal, we have empathy. Empathy, obviously, like they always say, the eyes don't lie. I mean, if your eyes are genuinely, if your heart is genuinely concerned, your eyes tend to, at least, have a clouded sense to be able to show that sense of empathy. Conflict resolution, obviously, in the world we live in, everybody is paying good money these days to be able to have people assist them resolving conflict, either internally within organizations or even, across different stakeholders. Written communication, which I mean, it will again, things have gone so far these days with Gemini, ChatGPT, all these online. Please, everybody, I normally like to ask, do we use all the different Gen AI tools? And as many people as use different Gen AI tools, kindly drop in the chat the ones you use. I'm always interested to find out, because I keep learning new ones, as we go on. Open AI, and all the different, Gen AI too. So if you use anything, whether it's ChatGPT, use Gemini, or if you don't use any at all, or you're totally averse to AI, let us know. But in fact, the world we live in, we're always interested to find out what are the newer tools coming out, and how can we all, oh, awesome, use Copilot. Okay, more use Copilot. That's good to know. Awesome. So what that does for us is that you can take the text of what you are going to communicate. In fact, I was talking with 8th graders in my church sometime. I mean, I was taking children's church one of those days, and I asked them about the different AI tool or communication tools they use. It was about the topic of discussion was about what do you call it now? Technology for younger generations. And they informed me that to do their homework and to do their assignment, these are 8th graders, so they're about 12 years of age. They told me emphatically that they take the question they are given, they go to ChatGPT or Gemini, or some people even use Copilot, like we said, and they indicate there, please give me this response. And that wasn't all they said. They said they actually instruct the AI, the Gen AI, robot, to please make sure the language is text or tailored to an 8th grader language. What that means is I can ask you for something as arbitrary as give me the information on the life cycle of a butterfly. Okay, and you can download the whole and they can probably download the whole encyclopedia for you. So they're telling the Gen AI robot that no, don't give me the whole encyclopedia. Give me in the context of an 8th grader answering this question. Are we getting it? So they even have the Gen AI to, tailor their speech, the written communication, so that it makes sense to their teacher in school when they see, or they read their essay. And I was so amazed. I said, in fact, so what do you really, all you need to know these days is how to tailor your request to your generative AI tool, and off you go, no matter the age bracket, or or the work effort you have to do. So written communication has come so far in terms of how you can tailor your tone, how you can get quality information. And I always encourage people, leverage these tools by all means, just to make sure that you proof check before you send out, because obviously a robot is always still a robot. Presentation skills, like what we're doing here today, and negotiation. Believe me, negotiation is a entirely different topic on its own, one that every business person, even for your personal level, something that you should probably do research on. And the skills to go with that, it doesn't, how can I put it now? It doesn't necessarily come overnight, and there's an opportunity to always build up on how you can negotiate, but they always say that the best ways to negotiate, or the best negotiation, techniques or ideas, is to make it win-win. So communication is very important. Like we said, we have come a long way in the world in terms of how we communicate, what communication skills are now considered, so the more we learn about this, the more we're informed, the better we all are. So please, at any point, if you have any questions you want to ask me, please feel free to drop in the chat. I believe we'll take questions at the end, or you can save your questions but just so in case you don't forget them. So now we're going to the communication process. In other words, there's an input, there's a decoding, there's a process, and there's an output. Like I said earlier, excuse me, what I mean, how your brain translates, decodes what has been processed to you, the process, how you process, and what you understand. And I always give this for instance. So again, I said Albert Arabian Mirabian said 55% of communication is based on body language, 38% in his estimation is based on tone of voice, and 7% is actual content. I always give this illustration. If, say, two people are in a relationship, I always try to give this example, and the guy is trying to communicate something specific to the girl, and he says, "I love you, I love you." I always try and make it a bit dramatic. I love you. I always ask if so. He has communicated something clear, right? He has said, "I love you." That's what has come out of his mouth. And there's a means, and there's a whole process, there's a whole body language he used, there's a whole tone of voice he used. If you are on the receiving end of this communication, what would you understand from what has been said? Please, let's drop our comments. Do we need me to do it again? Oh, we got the illustration I gave. Was the illustration okay? Sorry, I can't see our faces, so I have to assume that we all got. Let me see if I can try and see. Okay, can we drop in the chat, please? Based on what I just said and how I communicated, if you are the girl or you are the person on the receiving end of this, what will you understand was just communicated to you? Okay, thank you. So raw. Anybody else? Anybody else get anything out of it? Okay, maybe I'll do it again for those of us that may not have been paying attention. Um, a guy and a girl are in a, they're in some kind of, they're friends, and they're maybe taking a walk or something, and the guy is trying to communicate message to the girl, and the best way the guy can do it is by saying, I love you, I love you. So too direct. Okay, all right. Anything else? But does anybody get the sense that the guy is telling the girl that he loves her? Did anybody get that? Like, was on the receiving end? Would you, or if you are watching the movie, would you get that this guy is communicating that he loves this girl? Yeah, I just need to make sure that I just need no friendly tone. Thank you. So he has communicated the words "I love you." Okay, that is what he has meant to say. But on the process, while processing, the person hearing this, even if you are a third party watching the movie, you'll be like, huh? I mean, your brain would try to pause forced speech. Yes, he doesn't want to beat. So it's very direct. Even if you are watching a movie where you are seeing this unfold, you that is even a third party, your brain at that point will pause and to make even extra effort to understand, process this communication. Why? Because in the natural mind, love is, more of a sweet emotional communication. So your brain will even likely take an extra pause to try to understand, okay, what is he saying? He's saying I love you. But then you say, okay, but there's something off here. In my mind, love should be communicated like, I love you, I love you. So you're now wondering, okay, why is he being a bit, you know, what's with the tone? What's with the body language? So, if anything, your brain will spend extra time trying to decode the body language and the tone. And at the end of the day, what is communicated to you, even you, the third party, will be maybe this guy is a bit anxious. Maybe this guy is desperate, maybe he's fearful. Is this really love or is this, control? Are we getting it? Are we getting it? So there is so much that goes into our communication that what we say and what is perceived, the alignment of that is how we say you have made a good communication process and communication, or you have totally bungled it. Are we together? Okay, all right. If we are, we're going to move on to the next. Okay, awesome. So we're going to move on here. It says types of communication skills. Types. Again, we're talking about communication specifically. And please let me know when I'm halfway. Moderator, let me know when I'm halfway through. I want to make sure that I don't go over the 1 hour that I've been allocated. Types of communication skills. We have verbal communication. Your words, your choice of words. Words are very powerful. Whatever culture of the world you live in or you come from, words are very powerful. But what communication also includes in terms of verbal is not just the choice of words, but the tone of voice, your sentence structure, clear, concise messaging. Like they always say, there's an example they used to give when I was much younger of, communication and just the, the essence of it. And they say, if you make a sentence like this, multitude, there's a magnanimous conflagration that is consuming the edifice of my domicile. What do you understand by what I just said? I'll say it again. It's a sentence. Multitude, there's a magnanimous conflagration that is consuming the edifice of my domicile. Anybody understand what that means? No, if you don't, it's very fine. It's very okay. Please just let me know. What again? Sorry, I asked for a lot of feedback because when it's verbal when it's virtual communication and I can't really see people, I want to be sure that we're together. Multitude. A magnanimous conflagration is consuming the edifice of my domicile. Yes, someone said I'm lost. I don't understand. Thank you. Now, the person has just given a sentence. Are we getting it? But what they are really trying to say is, my people, come and help me. My house is on fire. Now, do you understand that? Now, if I put it this way, my people, come and help me. My house is on fire. What do we understand by? Do we understand that better? Is that better? As in, I need to know the second sentence. Does it make more sense? Better. Thank you. It's the same meaning. You're communicating the same thing, but your choice of words has totally changed the sentence. Are we getting it? So it's less of how verbose you sound and more of how understood you can be. In fact, for people that speak publicly and speak, public speakers, they would advise that your language structure should be that understood by a 12-year-old. So if a 12-year-old finds it hard to understand what you are saying, technically you're not communicating for a public audience. Okay? All right. So non-verbal communication, body language, like you said, expressions, gestures, complement or contradiction. So again, if I'm communicating and I'm fidgeting and nothing I say will communicate. Nothing I say. All you will be left off with is, why is she making so many gestures, so many movements? I can barely concentrate. Are we getting it? So you have to be very conscious of how you come across. The business world says how you show up. Okay, how you show up. Is it confident? Is it assertive? Or is it or is it clear? So that everybody can understand what you are trying. Because they say again, before you even open your mouth, your body language has given off 55%. You open your mouth, your tone gives another 38. Before people even wonder, okay, what is the content of what this person is saying? 7%. Okay? So yes, we have to ensure that communication, verbal, non-verbal, is important. Now, listening skills. Listening skills are very important. What does that mean? Somebody's communicating with you, especially when it's face to face, that you can, or it's one on one. Especially those of us that do podcasts, or we do what do they call it, live sessions. I mean, I enjoy IG live sessions, especially when people either interview you or I'm interviewing people. That's part of what my creative biz, not for profit does. The ability to communicate and also how to active listening, because when the person you're speaking with is responding to you, you want to be sure that you don't lose them, you don't lose your audience. So that if it's in a one-on-one session or even if it's face to face, or virtually, you want to be sure that active, like nodding, it helps the person that's communicating understand that what they're saying is being understood. I hear you, you hear me, and you are perceiving or understanding or at least assimilating what I am informing you about. Okay, so we have types of communication. We have the verbal, non-verbal, listening, written. Like I said, written communication has come so far. We have all these generative open AI tools that have made life a lot easier. Even if you are a 12th grader, an 8th grader and a 12-year-old, you can instruct ChatGPT or Gemini to please structure or tailor your output, your result, to the tone and language of an eighth grader, of a 12-year-old, just so that you can ensure that your 8th grade teacher, okay, perceives your work as yours and not as done for you by a generative AI robot. Are we getting it? Same thing for corporate communication. You can tell it, please, the tone should match that of a corporate individual. The tone should be easily understood by an executive C-suite level. You can challenge or instruct it to do it whichever way. So you're saying, rather than download an encyclopedia for me, please don't do that. Just give me the top 5 salient points and make sure that the tone is in the language that can be understood by an executive audience. How easy, and how much easier isn't that these days? Okay, yes. So interpersonal skills, yes, building rapport, empathy, conflict resolution. So these are all more interpersonal, day-to-day based, maybe within corporations, within organizations, but also important skill sets for us to have. I see that I'm halfway through, so I hope I still have my audience with me. Are we still together? Yes, I believe we are.
Yes,
Awesome.
we're still together.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
ma'am. We are
enthusiastic.
with
Yes,
you. We
ma'am.
are still with you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Sending messages, verbal communication, like we said, you have writing, you have speaking. I'm going to quickly go a little bit fast now. Sending messages, non-verbal communications, like we said, eye contact. Now, different parts of the world view this communication differently. For instance, I grew up in Africa, Nigeria, and where I grew up, looking an elder in the eye, I don't know if it's still the case now, was considered, impolite. You know, the challenge I had, so when I now moved over to, North America, countries of the world where, in fact, if you don't look somebody in the eye, you are considered not confident. So you see the difference in communication style or communication understanding. If it's countries of Africa, if you look an elder in the eye, you are being impolite because we should not look our elders in the eye. In other countries of the world, if you don't look a person in the eye, it's considered as you are not confident, or you're not, or you're being deceptive. So you have to kind of, definitely assess based on your audience. Okay, what is the best way to communicate? Because again, like we said, majority of what we say is non-verbal, right? So if majority of what we say is non-verbal, okay, and I'm trying to communicate to you, I have to be sure that I assess my audience and I communicate expressively, so eye contact, facial expression, okay, my gestures. Like I said, in some countries of the world, this is yes. In some, this is yes. So we know what best communicates to the audience I am speaking with. Okay, awesome. Okay, somebody has another comment. Let me see. Yes, I think it still is. Okay, awesome. So moving on, this says non-verbal communication. Okay, I missed that. Yes, like we said, eye contact. So one thing we also have to be very cognizant of is that when it comes to non-verbal communication, your expressions matter a lot. It matters a lot. For instance, if I'm speaking, I can speak now. I mean, we're all on, off camera, and somebody is looking at me like this, or doing this, I can assume either what I'm saying is not even interesting the person, or the person has other things on their mind, or the person is not following. So that's why, it's very helpful to look at facial expressions, because they always say the eyes are the windows to the soul, and for some of us, our facial expressions are more even expressive than others. There's a face they call poker face. What poker face means is, whatever you are thinking on the inside, you are able to mask it, with a plain expression. I cannot read, your expression. Actually, in most cases, it's considered even, a palatable thing. But more often than not, you find that if you look at your audience, you'll be able to tell, are they following what I'm saying? Am I communicating? Is it well received on their end, or are they have I totally lost them? So especially for for virtual communications like this, where you can't see the audience, you tend to ask, are we together? Are you following? Any questions? Because you want to be sure that your audience is with you and you have not lost them. Okay. Now, other types of non-verbal communication, and this is very commonly used, like I said, whether you are on the sending or the receiving end. Happiness, you can communicate sadness, you communicate anger, communicate fear, communicate disgust, communicate confused, communicate contempt. So like the example I gave earlier, where the guy used very, rather an aggressive tone to communicate his language. You know the how off that sounded, right? Your brain will have to take extra time to really deduce or decode what that person was communicating. Because for the natural human mind, if you're communicating love, in fact, for most of us, we imagine when you're communicating love, there should be music in the air, and everything should be serene. That's how we've been, wired, to perceive love communications. So when you come across as, very aggressive and angry, it's almost counterintuitive. if I can use that word. And your brain has to say, I hear the words I love you. That is, I hear the words I love you. But the communication style does not give me that sense. So if anything, it confuses the brain more than assures the brain. Are we getting it? So that's some of the nuances of communication that we have to note. Are the expressions, the facial, the tone, the non-verbal that I'm giving off, the cues I'm giving off, aligning with the words and the expected expression tones that I'm giving? Okay, if I'm telling you, for instance, if I'm telling you, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. Again, your brain gets confused because happiness usually will come with a smile or a slight giggle or a laugh. But your face is telling me you are upset, but your words are saying you are happy. Are we getting it? So these are some of the cues we have to really note. Again, non-verbal gestures, we have, using our hands, like I said, especially if you are communicating virtually these days, some cultures are okay with, excessive, hand gestures, and some is even more distracting. So it's kind of assessing what is, considered as more acceptable in some cultures than others. Okay, we're going to move on. So body language expression. What body language impression do the following people give? The first person, A. Any comments? Please drop your comments in the chat. If you are, again, on the receiving end of with communicating with person A, and that person comes to your meeting or your discussion and does that, what would you understand by A? Please, let's drop, because I usually get a lot of different views and opinions, and I'm always very interested to find out. So for person A, she's sitting down, her hands are crossed. What body language impression is she giving? Please, let's feel free to drop. Are we there? I can't see any comments in the chat yet. For communication with person A, she's sitting down with her hands crossed. What body language would she likely be giving off? Yes, let's take a look at what our thoughts are. Attentive. You see, that is where I thank you so much for our comments. I want to say the initial, because I actually totally see where we're coming from. I always perceive so too, that when you cross your arms in a meeting setting or something, and you're looking, either your hand, because you tend to find out when you cross your arms, you will tend to cock your head to one side. I think it's just the way the body adjusts. It assumably says you are listening with rapt attention. But do you know that in most corporate settings, if you cross your arms, it's considered that you are closed. Yes, I'm indifferent. You are closed off. Honestly, I had to learn this too. Like growing up, I always was made to understand that if I cross my arms, it shows that, I am giving you my undivided attention. But as it turns out, in most corporate settings, they say if you cross your arms, what you're inadvertently telling your audience or the person you're competing is that I am closed. The same way I cross my arms, I have closed off. Yes. So again, that is where understanding the cultures you are dealing with matters. Because in the first person sitting down, it's actually a very comfortable way, especially when you are listening, to not have to have your brain overwork too much, and you're listening. But some cultures perceive this as you have closed off. Okay, thanks for those comments. Because yes, I knew we may get a myriad of responses. For person B, with the posture they have, with their hands upon their knees and sitting down almost at the edge of their seat, what would we perceive? What body language impression are they giving off, whether knowingly or unknowingly? Anybody? Any comments? We're looking at the B image now. Impatient. Yes, they are off to go somewhere. So if you're meeting with somebody and you are like in that posture, the person was mostly thinking, this person doesn't really have my time. The person really won't, and in fact, they maybe ask you, are you in a hurry? Do you have to go? Because you are inadvertently giving that, off that impression just by your body language. Okay, and then person C, what do we perceive? Or what can be perceived? Person C. What do we think? What do we think? Person C. Okay, let's see what we think. Thinking, yes, thinking. Confused, yes, yes. So, and thank you for these comments. The reason I am really appreciating this our comments is because for recent times we've been advised, especially like those of us that do job interviews, or you present. If you need time to think, if you need time to think, you are normally advised to tell the person you're talking, especially when it's in an interview process, that let me think about that for a minute. So when you say let me think about that for a minute, and because when you're thinking about something, your eyes may tend to look a bit worried or confused. It doesn't mean that you particularly are. It's just that because your brain is taking a minute to process what you heard and come up with an answer, your eyes may look a bit beclouded. So you're usually advised that you can communicate to the person you're with. Maybe you can even say, oh, that's interesting. Let me think about that for a minute. So that if your eyes look a bit beclouded, the person is not left thinking, oh, is the person confused? Does the person don't know what to say? They understand from what you have said verbally that you are processing. And so, like any other human being, they will give you the minute or two, or the 10 seconds or so you need for your brain to process. Are we getting it? Because generally, the person may have been asked a question and their brain is thinking. But the human mind, when we see such expressions, we can think a myriad of things. We can think doubt. You can think I've lost this person. Hello, anybody home? But when you say, thank you for that. Can I have a minute to think about it? Then the person automatically says, oh, sure, and understands that anything else they see on your facial expression, like I said, they said the eyes are the windows to the soul, is not you being confused or you being in doubt. It's simply you processing to be able to give the adequate answer. Okay, we're going to move on quickly now. So core communication skills, like we mentioned, we have listening, we have feedback. Listening skills, we mentioned, very important. In addition, feedback skills, which can also be active listening. When you're nodding and someone is talking, the person knows that, you are able to assimilate or perceive, what they are saying. And we have presentation skills. So we're going to move on to watch the video. I'm hoping that I can have it queued. Sorry about that. So that we can watch, because this was a very, okay. Permit me. Let me stop this for now. Okay, let me go to, I believe I had it queued, but I don't know if I still have it. 1 second. Okay, importance of listening. Okay, let me see my YouTube. Okay. So I'm going to go back and copy that link. 1 second. Okay, let me do this. And let me do. One second. Yes, this was it actually. Awesome. So let me go back and cue it so we can watch. If you can't see my screen.
Because there's something very particular. Peter, I want to talk to you about this afternoon's client meeting because there's something very particular I wanted to make sure that you know.
Yeah, I know. We got to get the food there on time this time, Joanne.
Yes, we have to get the food on time, but that's not it. This is a culturally different group than what we're used to.
What, can you order Chinese food?
No, it's not the Chinese food. It's that this group manages Q&A differently.
I just want to make sure that Chinese food is better than it was last time.
It's not the food. It's the Q&A.
Both times.
Peter, it's the way they manage Q&A.
Q&A is not a problem for me, Joanne. I'm really fine with Q&A. It's where I shine.
It's not you. It's them.
That's
they
my
don't.
tie.
The tie's fine.
Okay, don't worry about the Q&A. It'll be fine. I'll see you later.
Peter, you're not listening to me.
Ignore distractions and focus. First, don't interrupt. Second, make good eye contact. And third, paraphrase for understanding.
Peter, I want to talk to you about this afternoon's client meeting because there's something very particular I want to make sure you know about this group.
All right, what is it?
Well, they're a Japanese group. They don't interact during Q&A in the same way.
So what does it mean for me?
Well, it means that you should probably plan to lecture a little bit more and then break into smaller groups. Don't expect the same amount of interaction.
Okay, so for Q&A, really don't expect that lecture more because they're not going to say too much.
Exactly.
Got
That's it.
Okay, see you later.
Good. And hey, I like that tie.
For consulting services and tips, go to don'tquityourdayjob.com.
Wow. So what do we think about the whole communication end-to-end process? How they started, how they were able to, get to a misunderstanding and the comeback. What were our thoughts about the first interaction and the second interaction? Any take on it? Do we see any difference of approach, difference of, technique, what the man did differently, what the woman was able to accomplish? What are our thoughts about the two? So I hope we all caught the video. There was the first session or the first take, excuse me, and how the man responded, and there was the second take. Any thoughts on either of them? Excuse me, please. Please let's drop our comments in the chat. Any thoughts on how either of them played out? Are we here? Okay. Because of our time, I think I'll walk us through. For the first one, we saw how. Okay, let me pause and get our comments. Okay, thank you. Awesome. Okay, yes, he wasn't paying attention in the first scene. He seemed uninterested. The first instance shows the man is not interested in the discussion, which could be the tone of the woman, while the second, okay, the last take was better. The first scene, they didn't communicate well and they interrupted. Awesome. So we know we're talking about active listening. Active listening. The truth about active listening is that the reason most people can even nod or give you eye contact is because our mind has been tuned to listen. And so the eye contact is more or less as a result of it, okay? And the nodding is as a result of what you have already programmed and told your brain to do. Now, in the first instance, you notice the man barely gave her eye contact, and he didn't even, obviously he didn't nod because he had tuned out his brain. He was not prepared to listen to what the woman had to say. He had what he had in his mind, and that was what was beclouding him. So he didn't even give her, undivided full attention in what she was saying. He wasn't listening. So because his brain wasn't there, none of the cues showed up. He neither gave her proper eye contact, nor did he even, be able to nod. But the second one, when she spoke, he was able to attend. She got his attention. So he now listened because he heard what she said. He regurgitated. He reiterated what she said to her, and she was able to confirm yes. And so he got the message. Are we getting it? So that's some of the differences in communication. Okay, the first instance, okay, he was not paying attention. And it showed up in how he responded, what came out of his mouth, and it was a frustration. The woman was frustrated because she's like, I'm trying to get you to do this, but you're not listening. The second instance, when she spoke, he gave her his undivided attention. He heard what she said. He now repeated back and said, okay, so this is what I hear you saying. And she was able to confirm yes. And so at the end, he said, got it, because it means, you have spoken what you had intended to say. I have gotten it. To be sure I understood, I was able to communicate it back to you. You're able to confirm for me that was it. So I'm good. Okay? So these are some of the ways that we can, again, I always say, the result of the eye contact or the nodding and active listening is not in isolation. It will only come as a result of you turning your attention to focus on what the person is saying. And so when your brain has been told, no, stop what you are thinking right now and pay attention, you find automatically your head can nod and say, oh, because you are getting the information. And so the active listening cues now follow, almost, automatically. Okay? If there are any questions or comments, make sure to drop. I'm just going to go ahead and do the second. If we have a little bit of time, let's see. I hope we have a bit of time to do the second. If not, we can keep going.
Ma'am, we just have about 10 minutes to go.
Yes, we have about 10 minutes. But I think we have covered majority of the slides. But in any case, okay, let me go ahead and keep going then. I think we've covered majority of the slides anyway. Okay, so active listening. Active listening helps you ensure that you hear the other person, like we are saying, and that the other person knows you are listening to what they say. Okay, active listening skills to practice. You paraphrase, ask open-ended questions, you ask specific probing questions, you use short verbal affirmations, display empathy. Not I'm particular about the nodding because the nodding really helps. It's a very easy and simple way. Smile, yes. Avoid distracting movements and maintain eye contact. Again, like I said, in some cultures of the world, eye contact, is considered as, not appropriate. Some is considered as appropriate. So, assess and, act or react accordingly. But definitely these are some of the intricate skills or, the cues for active listening that we all need to communicate. Okay, so we've mentioned skills. We have listening skills, we have feedback skills. Feedback skills, positive feedback is more readily and accurately perceived than negative feedback. So in terms of communication, when you're communicating feedback skills, okay, we're told, and I'll say this quickly to give us a few minutes for questions. One very good way of giving feedback, we are told, especially when it comes to negative feedback, is to use what they call a sandwich approach. A sandwich approach. What does that mean? It means, like they say, for a sandwich, you have the bread, you have the bologna, or the or the ham or whatever it is that is your protein. Some people just use cheese or butter as your protein, and then you have bread. Now, what is it? What is in the middle is the main meat of the matter, right? But when you're communicating, you start with the bread, which is something, mild and easy. It lands, to kind of, give a soft landing. So you give a compliment, something that, and not flattery, something that you say, something that is true. And then you address the issue you're trying to address. And then at the end, you also give something that is, complimentary to the person. That is one good way I advise people. If you use that method of feedback, you will get a very good, you'll get better reception to what you are saying. Okay, so oftentimes people's feedback does not have an insulting tone. Okay, let's look at the difference between an insult and feedback. Okay, again, we're talking about communication and how you communicate. Okay, when you are giving feedback, so we spoke about listening skills, now we're talking about feedback skills. Okay, different things you can do. Avoid being vague. Avoid trying to intend to hurt the person. Give factual statements. In other words, what's it called now? Or if you must give opinionated, you can make it clear that this is just based on maybe perception. Because again, you have to always give benefit of the doubt. Okay, so insults can come across sounding like identity. In other words, you are attacking the person versus attacking the situation. So kind of distinguish between that, and the environment you do it. Is it in front of colleagues and friends, or is it, in fact, for most of us, especially those that work in the corporate world, all one-on-one feedback, all feedback is given in a one-on-one session. You do not give feedback directly in a meeting session. In fact, it can happen obviously because we're human, and I think sometimes we slip up as human beings. But as much as possible, we ensure that feedback is given in a one-on-one and not in a meeting session, because it should be one-on-one with the person in question. Okay, and of course our emotions should be put in check. Our language should be put in check. And we should avoid negative comment, character defamation, and character attacks. Obviously, you should address the situation, and allow the person you are giving the feedback to or requesting feedback from, explain, the situation. Awesome. So key communication skills. Okay, we have manners of feedback. You can have aggressive feedback, you can have submissive, you can have assertive. So these are all different ways. I usually recommend for people that for feedback and how to give constructive feedback, this is something that we can probably be handled. There's a lot of material online. This is what I advise. As many people as want to go ahead and research and look, it could be helpful. But in terms of how we give each other feedback, obviously, we should make sure that we consider different approaches, and approaches that are better tailored to the people or the environment we're giving it under. Okay, so developing effective feedback skills, we have focused on specific behaviors. Keep feedback impersonal. Okay, keep it goal oriented. What do we mean by that? You are trying to achieve a goal, so you ensure that what you say is tailored towards getting to that end. You're not just giving random feedback, and you obviously extend understanding, and all that. Okay, so now we're going to presentation skills. So we did listening skills, feedback skills, presentation skills. So presentation, what is it? Ideas, concepts, or issues talked about or spoken to a group or audience. What are some of the key things you have to do? First, obviously, aspects of a good presentation, you have to understand yourself. Okay, understand yourself, know yourself, know your audience, and know your material. If you know these three things, you will do very well in whatever you're presenting. Understand yourself. In other words, what are the best triggers for you to do well? Do you need to rehearse before time? I mean, I've done things in my professional career where I've had to present before executive audiences, whether virtual or in person. And I have rehearsed the material I'm going to present. In other words, I have recorded my voice. Okay, you can use your phone. There are different recording devices. Recorded my voice, especially if it's virtual, because I want to hear how I come across, and played it back for myself so I can understand, okay, what's my tone like, especially when it's virtual, because I want to ensure that my tone and the content of what I'm saying, align. Especially when you have very limited time to present, you don't want to go blabbing. Okay, I wanted to be sure that my tone of voice and the pace I was, talking at, was one that I won't lose my audience. So you can do that. You can actually record yourself, hear how you come across, and then so that you understand, okay, how should I, dilate my tone so that, I don't give off, conflicting messages. I sound even. Okay, that is self-regulation. I was regulating how I come across. The second, my audience. What do they care about? Okay, it's an executive audience. They only want the bottom line. What matters to them? What should they be concerned about? What is the salient point? And some of my, in fact, if you do an MBA, they always advise you that when you're presenting before audiences, lead with your most salient point. What do they mean by that? If you have 3 or 4 main issues, don't start with the least and then go to the most important. No, because the audience, especially if it's an executive audience, they don't have time. They may not even be with you. You may not even get to if you do it that way. So lead with your most salient, so that even if you don't get to cover all your points, you have covered the most salient that you need to cover. Okay? And then subject, know your material. This cannot be overemphasized. Preparation is key. Know your material. If you're presenting something, make sure you know it, so that even, because again, for most audiences, especially executive, we're discouraged to be reading off the screen. Like I come and say, key communication skills, presentation skill, continued asset. No, they're like, if you're presenting, we can see the slides. So you don't need to reiterate the slides. Just give me the context you are coming from, so that I can follow along. So the slides are a guide, an addition. But your voice and what is you're coming across with is the main thing people leave with. Okay? Awesome. So presentation skills, 5 questions. Must know what do you want to present? What's your content? What's your purpose? What's the place? In other words, the environment, the audience, and what are you trying to present, and who is your audience. Awesome. So I think we have covered most of the material. Yes, we have 1 more minute to go. All the other ones, I would say, we can definitely try to read through them. I'm sure these slides will be made available, but I also want to stop here because I'm cognizant of time, and I want to ask any questions, any comments before I hand back over to our moderator. Any questions, any comments, any key points we want to highlight before I hand back over? Okay, so I think there were some comments that came in earlier. I would go and look at those. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so I think we covered most of the context I asked earlier. I'm really grateful for all the comments. So basically speaking, any other questions in addition? Okay, so let me throw out a question and see if maybe I can get some feedback from us. If you are in a presentation scenario and you're asked a question that you did not prepare for, what do you do? Did you get my question? You are presenting before an audience. and it comes to the Q&A, or somebody throws out a question and you did not prepare for that question, what do we think is an appropriate way to address that and not, take away or not have to, reduce or take away from the presentation you are doing? In other words, you address the question, you're able to get back to the content and continue. What do we think is any appropriate way for us to do that? Can we give our comments on that, please? Okay, let me look at our questions. Okay, thank you. The first one, Sunset, I enjoyed the session. I want to ask how a speaker can read their body language. Okay, I enjoyed the session. I want to ask how a speaker can read. Okay, so you're saying when you are presenting, how do you read people's body language? That's a good question. So for virtual like this is, when most people are off camera, what you can do is like I always do, you can throw out questions for people to respond. Because if you throw out, you are forcing people to pay more attention and to respond. And when they respond, in this case for virtual, you will read the what they call it now, the comments, that have been illustrated. That is that. The other way, if it is in person, what you want to do is you read in terms of, are people making eye contact with you? Because if you are presenting and people are distracted, it's a number of things. Either your message is not communicating, or your presentation is not sitting well, or it's not landing well, or it's not, how do you put it now? It's not being received very well. So what you can do is you step out, especially if it's presenting before an audience and you're behind a podium, you can step out of behind the podium and actually go into, the audience, because that way you are forcing them to look up, whether they're on their phones or whatever, and pay attention, So that's one good way to recapture attention if you feel you haven't gotten it or you have lost it and you're presenting. If you're behind the podium, human beings these days, especially, we give people about 5 seconds, if at all 2 seconds to get. If you don't get my session in 2 seconds, you have lost it. So if it's virtual, like I did, you ask questions and simply drop comments in the chat, or that gets people thinking. Or people's cameras are on, you check for the active listening cues. But if all that fails and it is a one-on-one in person, in fact, you can leave the podium, you go into the audience, you walk through the aisles, and you now ask them questions, you talk, because that way you are forcing them to pay attention. Okay, awesome. All right.
All right.
So
Thank you very much, ma'am.
you're welcome. Somebody had their hand raised. Sorry, I think I just
Yeah.
told.
Okay, one more question because we're already eating into the next session's time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
Damala, please, please allow me share my video. Please,
Right,
everybody, a
sir.
round of applause in the chat room. A massive, massive, massive round of applause for Mrs. Ogubi, for Tinuke. Please, a round of applause, everybody in the chat room.
You
Tina,
can
I
share your
want to be
video
able
now.
to speak. I want to be able to articulate myself, just like you do when I eventually grow up. As it is, I want to be able to do. I want to be able to do what you're doing with the ease and the poise and the finesse and every other thing that you've demonstrated. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. You're 6 hours behind us. I can imagine that you were awake at 3 a.m. or even earlier to be able to take this particular session. So please, once again, everybody in the chat room, a massive round of applause. She's woken up somewhere in Toronto or somewhere like that, and she's 6 hours behind just to be able to take this class for us. So thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you. We
Thanks.
appreciate your
Thanks for
time,
having me. Thank
and
you.
I'm certain that we will have you in future sessions, and everybody here has been tremendously blessed and empowered by your session or with your session today. So once again,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much. We appreciate you. Thank you. God bless you.
You as
Take care.
well. Thank you.
All
Have
right.
a
God
wonderful
bless
rest
you.
of the day. Thank you.
All right. I think one or two people said that they might still have a question. I don't know. Is there anything? Please let her answer the question she asked. They said you did ask a question
I
and that
did.
you should answer your own question. So that will
Okay.
be the last one.
Okay,
You should answer
if
your
we
own
can take
question.
it,
Go ahead.
if we can take it, yeah. So I said, when you're presenting before an audience and you asked a question you did not prepare for, how do you handle it without losing your audience and losing your composure? Because it's a very important thing. So one way people advise is you can say things like, no, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. Let me think about that for a minute. That's one way you can do it, because what you are doing is you are addressing and letting the audience know that your brain is going to be processing. So it gives you a few minutes to actually get yourself together and your brain to think. That's one way. Second way, you can say, yes, that's interesting. Does anybody in the audience have any comment to make? What that does is that it opens it up, because in fairness, in life, you cannot know everything. You can't prepare for everything, and they're always curveballs. But when you either give yourself room to think, you're saying, that's interesting, let me think about that for a minute. Your brain has a few seconds to process, and to kind of compose and think. Or you say, does the audience have any, comment about it? You throw it open to the audience so that they can, because again, sometimes the best answers you get come from the audience and not necessarily from yourself. So these are some of the ways, so that at least, you address the person's question, you don't lose your composure, and you still maintain control of your presentation. I hope that helps, and I was really glad to be here. Hopefully, like our
Thank you
director
very much
said.
again,
So,
We appreciate you. Thank you. God bless you. All right. Over to you, Mr. Damala. I think you need to introduce the next session. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Um, Before I introduce the next session, I know that was a very insightful class for me as well. I would like everyone here to know that the link for the AI and machine learning class has been sent to the chat room, and I'm resending it again. So if you're for the AI and machine learning, you go to the chat room, you click on the link, and you move to the class. The class is open and is ready to begin. So without wasting more time,